When I grew up, um, when I was little, I'm thinking between the ages of 5 and 7, I lived in a town which is now a bigger town, but back then it wasn't so much of a town as a village. It's a quiet sort of place. I think the used to have a market every week. It was a market town, perhaps, for the even smaller towns in the surrounding area. I can't think of what industries it had. On one side, our neighbour was an architect, a very old-fashioned architect, called Henry or Hendrik. I can't remember. And on the other side was an old folks' home. Not an old folks' home, more of a community for OAPs, for the retired and elderly, and they offered different levels of assistance. Some people were in fully assisted living apartment blocks, and other people had more independence. They had their houses, and perhaps they had a nurse who comes to check on them every week or every day. There was one woman who I became friends with, and I can still picture her face today. She had a bulbous nose that was really prominent in her face. She had quite heavy bags under her eyes and a lot of wrinkles all over her face, and absolutely no teeth whatsoever. But she was a very cheerful woman, and her face would light up when she smiled, and there was something very handsome about her. She had quite thin, short-cropped white hair, and wore a nightgown all day long with a robe over it, or at least when I try and picture what she's wearing, I suppose I usually saw her in her house. And she was a lovely woman. She must have been 80 or 90 years old, completely deaf. She owned a parrot, and the parrot was her only steady companion. And this parrot was really glorious. It was archetypal. It was red with a bit of yellow, black and blue. And it was loud. And come to think of it, that's the reason why she was deaf. Probably. Or else maybe she was deaf first, and that's what enabled her to have such a noisy thing around and not mind. But she was the woman with the parrot, and I can't remember what her name was, but she was a terribly generous soul. I don't know that she had many relatives who came to visit, but I would stop by often, and she would give me biscuits or a lollipop. At one point she entered into a sort of contest with one of the other old ladies in the residence. I don't think they liked each other much, and I became the bargaining chip between them. They would compete for my favour. And I don't know how aware of this I was at the time, but my parents explained to me later that these two old women, who didn't get along very well, were engaged in this passive-aggressive warfare, whereby they would post colouring books through my door and make sure to have nice treats for me if I came round, and would even see me walking past and wave me in, and I became this game to them, but I didn't mind as a child. I remember really liking the benefits that came with that, and accepting things as they came, really. But that parrot was was the loudest pet I've ever known.